Well, the coronavirus.
The coronavirus pandemic.
The Wuhan coronavirus.
Coronavirus crisis.
The process.
Kasi sa planet.
Okay, next line.
To go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone.
Hello, greetings. I am Professor Jun Cajigal and welcome to this virtual lecture about the science of Star Trek. The Star Trek franchise was created by Gene Roddenberry, and because of the exploration and the adventures of the USS Enterprise and its crew, I got inspired to love and be engaged in the sciences. Star Trek had a great impact in my life. So this is more of a sharing, and I would like to share with you my experience and my passion and love for this TV series, Star Trek. So sit back and relax and enjoy about the science of Star Trek. Okay, Scotty, beam me up. Energize.
Hello, greetings. This is Professor Jun Cajigal and welcome to this virtual lecture entitled The Science of Star Trek. Now, the idea that Star Trek has changed my life and the world might sound as far-fetched as some of the USS Enterprise's spacefaring missions. But the truth is that the science fiction series Star Trek has directly or indirectly impacted both my present and future. Now, there are several ways that Star Trek had influenced me, and one of them would be the increased interest in science. I fell in love with science because of Star Trek. And one of the most important ways Star Trek has left an indelible footprint in my life is that the spirit of adventure and discovery inspired me to learn about what makes our universe tick. As Captain Kirk would say, to boldly go where no man has gone before. While most Star Trek science and technology is rooted in fantasy, it hasn't stopped me from exploring ideas from the show. Now, one example is the Alcubierre warp drive. This is a speculative idea put forth by a theoretical physicist by the name of Miguel Alcubierre, in which a spacecraft could achieve faster than light travel. The actual science behind the theory is incredibly complicated, as science fiction and fact magazine shows. But at the end result would be something very similar to Star Trek's warp drive or Star Wars hyperspace. So come with me and let us explore the science behind Star Trek. Now, Star Trek was created by no other than Gene Roddenberry. Star Trek was an original TV series created by Gene Roddenberry, and there were 3 seasons of that original TV series that ran from 1966 to 1968. Now, at this point, let us now mention some of the main characters of that original TV series of Star Trek. Now, the USS Enterprise was commanded by Captain James T. Kirk, or James Tiberius Kirk, played by William Shatner. Then we have Commander Spock, who's the second officer, played by Leonard Nimoy. Then we have Lieutenant Uhura, who is the communications officer, played by Nichelle Nichols. Then we have Lieutenant Hikaru Sulu, the helmsman, played by George Takei. Then we have Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott, or popularly called Scotty, who is the chief engineer, played by James Doohan. Then we have Commander Pavel Chekhov, who's the navigator, played by Walter Koenig. And we have Dr. Leonard McCoy, who is the chief medical officer, played by DeForest Kelly. And we have Christine Chappell, who's the head nurse, played by Majel Barrett, who became the wife of Gene Roddenberry. So those are the main characters from the Star Trek original TV series. And this is my favorite photo of them inside the bridge of the USS Enterprise. Now, the Star Trek original series had spawned several movies and multiple TV spin-offs watched by thousands of kids, including me, who went into science and engineering. Now, after the Star Trek original series, Gene Roddenberry created the Star Trek The Next Generation. So the following are the main characters from Star Trek The Next Generation. Now, the USS Enterprise was commanded by Captain Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart. Now, he has a second officer by the name of Commander William Riker. That's his second officer, played by Jonathan Frakes. Then we have Lieutenant Commander Data, who's the science officer. And by the way, Lieutenant Commander Data is an android, played by Brent Spiner. Then we have Lieutenant Worf, who's a Klingon. He's a weapons specialist, played by Michael Dorn. Then we have Dr. Beverly Crusher, who is the Chief Medical Officer, played by Gates McFadden. And we have Geordi LaForge, who is the Chief Engineer, played by LeVar Burton. And we have Diana Troy, Ship's Counselor, played by Marina Sirtis. By the way, Diana Troy is a Betazoid. All right. So the USS Enterprise, that's the main ship of Star Trek. What a magnificent ship is the USS Enterprise. So this is the configuration of the USS Enterprise in the original Star Trek TV series. Alright, so that's the USS Enterprise from the original Star Trek series. What a magnificent ship. Then we have here the USS Enterprise from the Star Trek The Next Generation. Okay, so this ship can travel faster than light or warp speed. So before we continue, I guess it is also important to mention some of the famous sections of the Starship Enterprise, starting with the bridge. Now, the bridge is said to be the command center or the brain of the USS Enterprise. So in the bridge, you would expect to see the captain. So in the original TV series, that's Captain James T. Kirk. And also in the bridge, you would expect to see his second officer. So in the original TV series, that's Mr. Spock. Plus also you have the helmsman, the navigator, and the communications officer. So that's the bridge, that's the command center. And what you're seeing now is the main viewing screen of the bridge of the USS Enterprise. Okay, so this is from the movie Wrath of Khan. Okay, so that's the bridge of the USS Enterprise. Okay, this is the bridge from Star Trek The Next Generation. So you would see at the middle, that's Captain Jean-Luc Picard, his second officer, Lieutenant Commander William Riker. Then you have Diana Troy, the counselor, and standing there, that's Lieutenant Worf, who is the weapons specialist. Now, another famous section of the USS Enterprise, both in the original TV series and in the Star Trek Next Generation USS Enterprise, is the engineering section. Now, in the engineering section, you would find the engine of the USS Enterprise, or the warp drive engine. So this is similar to the engine room of a ship, or let's say an aircraft carrier. And in the original Star Trek series, the boss of the engineering section is Scotty, played by James Doohan. Alright, so here are some pictures from the original TV series of Star Trek. So this is the engineering section, or the engine room, wherein you would find the warp drive engine. Okay, so these are some photos of the engineering section from the original TV series. Okay, and this is the warp drive engine from the Star Trek The Next Generation. Now, another important and famous section of the USS Enterprise, both in the original series and in the Next Generation series, is the transporter room. Now, inside the transporter room is a special machine called a transporter. A transporter is a fictional teleportation machine used in the Star Trek universe. Transporters, they convert a person or an object into an energy pattern, a process known as dematerialization, and then beam it to a target location where it is reconverted into matter, or we call that rematerialization. That's why you have the famous line, "Scotty, beam me up." So that's the famous transporter room.
All I know, sir, is what the captain tells me. And he says he'll have the hide of the first man that so much as smiles.
I'd have expected sanity from the ship's surgeon, at least. President Lincoln, indeed. No doubt to be followed by Louis of France and Robert the Bruce.
If so, we'll execute appropriate honors to each, Mr. Scott.
Aye, sir.
Gentlemen, I don't for a moment believe that President Lincoln is actually coming aboard, but we're dealing with an unknown and apparently highly advanced life form. Until we know, when in Rome, we'll do as the Romans do.
Bridge to transporter room. 1 minute to overhead position.
Locked on to something. Does that appear human to you, Mr. Spock?
Fascinating. For a moment, it appeared almost mineral, like living rock with heavy foreclaws. Settling down now to completely human readings.
We can beam it aboard any time now, sir.
Dr. McCoy, take tricorder readings and see if it is human. Appropriate ruffles and flourishes, Mr. Spock. Security, stand ready.
Phaser team, set ready for a heavy stun.
Band honors ready, Captain.
Energize. The USS Enterprise is honored to have you aboard, Mr. President.
Strange. Where are the musicians?
That's taped music, sir. A starship on active duty never carries an honor detachment.
Taped music, you say? Well, perhaps Mr. Spock will be good enough to explain that to me later. A most interesting way to come aboard, Captain. What was the device used?
An energy matter scrambler, sir. The molecules in your body are converted into energy, then beamed into this chamber and reconverted back into their original pattern.
Well, since I am obviously here, and quite whole, whatever you mean apparently works very well indeed. Gentlemen, if those are weapons, please lower them. At my age, I'm afraid I'm not very dangerous.
Now, isn't that fascinating about the transporter room? So, if you want to be transported from one planet to another, then you go to the transporter room, and when that transporter machine is activated, your molecules are broken down into energy. And that energy is beamed down into the target location. And in the target location, your molecules are reassembled or rematerialized. Alright, so isn't that fascinating about the transporter room? Alright, now please forgive me because I will be focusing on Star Trek, the Next Generation, and Star Trek, the original series. But there are other franchises like Star Trek Discovery, you have Star Trek Enterprise. But since I grew up with the original series and the Next Generation, I'll be focusing on those two. Now, for Star Trek spin-off, there are a number of scientific and engineering innovations that was influenced by the technology that we see on Star Trek. And one of them is the communicator. Now, Dr. Martin Cooper, the inventor of the mobile phone, credits the communicator from Star Trek as being the inspiration behind the technology. So here is the communicator. Okay, that's the communicator by Captain James T. Kirk. Alright, and the mobile phone was actually inspired from this communicator. So isn't that fascinating indeed? Now, another important Star Trek spin-off is the Bluetooth headset. Now, the Bluetooth may have been inspired by Lieutenant Uhura's communicator. Now, everybody kindly zoom in on that earpiece of Lieutenant Uhura. So, the Bluetooth headset may have been inspired by the earpiece of Lieutenant Uhura. So, isn't that fascinating that today's technology, today's Bluetooth, was inspired by Lieutenant Uhura's earpiece?
Planet.
Yes, sir.
Not one of which is capable of launching an interstellar flight.
No, sir.
Yet one of them accomplished it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chekhov.
Captain, I'm picking up high energy generation on planet 6.
It's the primitive glaciated planet.
Yes, sir.
The source, Lieutenant?
It could be natural. Volcanic activity, steam, any of a number of causes. But it's very regular.
What do your surface readings show, Mr. Chekhov?
No sign of organized civilization. Primitive humanoids picked up at irregular intervals.
Now, isn't that fascinating about Lieutenant Uhura's earpiece? And that earpiece led the way for the development of the Bluetooth technology that we are enjoying today. Now, another Star Trek spin-off was the desktop computer. Now, the computer from Star Trek was the inspiration which was used to create devices that included the first desktop computer. So the computer on the left was the computer used in Star Trek, the original series, and the two computers below are the early versions of the Apple computer. So the developers of the desktop computers got their inspiration from Star Trek?
I do, sir.
All right, Clark.
Charge, culpable negligence, specification in that on star date 2945.7, by such negligence, Captain Kirk James T. did cause loss of life, to wit, the life of Records Officer Lieutenant Commander Finney Benjamin. To all recorded charges and specifications, what is the plea?
Not guilty.
Proceed, Lieutenant.
I call Mr. Spock.
Spock, serial number S179-276SP, service rank, Lieutenant Commander, position, First Officer, Science Officer, current assignment, USS Enterprise, commendations, Vulcanian Scientific Legion of Honor, awards of valor, twice decorated by Starfleet Command.
Mr. Spock, as a first officer, you know a great...
So here is a computer used in the Star Trek, the original series. And we have here a picture of Captain Jean-Luc Picard using his personal computer in Star Trek, The Next Generation. Now, another Star Trek spin-off is the tablet computer. Now, the tablet computer was first introduced in Star Trek, the original series. As you could see in these pictures, we have here Captain James T. Kirk using a tablet computer. And we have here a picture of Captain Jean-Luc Picard in his version of the tablet computer in the Star Trek, The Next Generation. Okay, and we have here Lieutenant Commander William Riker using a tablet computer. So the tablet computer got its inspiration from Star Trek. So isn't that fascinating indeed? Okay, so the tablet computer was first introduced in the Star Trek, the original series, and it continued in Star Trek, The Next Generation. So the developers of the tablet computer got their inspiration from Star Trek.
Maintaining standard orbit, Captain.
Reach orbit to 20,000 perigee, Mr. Sulu. Aye, aye.
Will you sign this, sir?
Yeoman. You have a reason for being on the bridge, Commodore Stalker?
I'd hope for a few words with you at your convenience.
I have very little time.
If I may say so, sir, we have a due date at Starbase 10.
We're going to be late. I don't intend to leave this area until we've found a solution for this problem.
Captain, I am watching 4 very valuable and 1 almost irreplaceable members of the Starfleet failing before my eyes. I want to do something to help.
Yes, if you're so concerned, I'll send a message to Starbase 10.
You sent such a message this morning.
Hellman! Where's that?
Sir,
Fuel consumption report.
I gave it to you, sir, and you signed it.
If I had signed it, I wouldn't ask for it, now would I?
Your signature, Captain.
So another Star Trek spin-off was the medical tricorder. So the medical tricorder was first introduced in Star Trek original series. So we have here a picture of Dr. Leonard McCoy together with the head nurse, Miss Christine Chappell, doing an operation using that medical tricorder and medical scanner used to monitor the vital signs of the patient. So Dr. Leonard McCoy's medical tricorder monitors vital signs, namely blood pressure, electrocardiography that includes ECG, heart rate, variability, body temperature, respiratory rate, and oxygen saturation. And we have here a picture of the medical dashboard used in the Star Trek, the original series. So if all those pointers would drop, then Dr. McCoy would say, "Jim, he's dead."
Sit down and breathe deeply, please.
Did I hear you call him Dr. McCoy?
You did?
McCoy. I've heard Nancy speak of a Dr. McCoy.
Well, that's me. Didn't she mention I was here?
You've seen Nancy?
She went out to get you.
You've seen her, too. You were with the good doctor.
Yes, why?
I think it's just that it gives me great pleasure to know that she's gotten to see an old friend and has a chance for some company. It was different for me. I enjoy solitude. But for a woman, you understand, of course.
Well, it certainly hasn't aged her. She looks exactly as I knew her 12 years ago. Amazing, Jim. Like a girl of 25.
Oh, I'm sorry, Captain. Sit down. I seem to have forgotten my manners.
Quite all right. I'm not joking, Jim. She hasn't aged a day. There's not a gray hair in her head.
She's got some gray bones. Excuse me, Professor. She's a handsome woman, yes, but hardly 25.
You've seen my wife with the eyes of your past attachment, Doctor. I'm sure when you see her again, she'll be of a believable age.
Well, at any rate, she doesn't look a day over 30.
Genuine affection. I'm glad you still feel it for her. Leonard, isn't it? She's a fine woman.
Open your mouth.
Why, I thought the machine was...
The machine is capable of almost anything. But I'll still put my trust in a healthy set of tonsils. Now, open your mouth.
Now, this is not a product anymore of fantasy and science fiction. Now, a functional, real-world version of the famous medical tricorder is now available, and it is called the Scanadu Scout. So, the Scanadu Scout, through its sensors, can read heart rate, temperature, oxygen levels, run an electrocardiogram, gauge heart rate variability, check blood pressure in a matter of seconds. And it also provides a complete ECG reading beamed straight to your smartphone via Bluetooth. So isn't that fantastic indeed? So the Scanadu Scout is held like the medical tricorder of Dr. Leonard McCoy. So the Scanadu Scout will automatically read your vital signs like heart rate, oxygen saturation, blood pressure, and the readings are then transmitted to your smartphone via Bluetooth. So the development of the Scanadu Scout got its inspiration from Dr. Leonard McCoy's medical tricorder. Now, in relation to this, another Star Trek spin-off was the Star Trek Hypo Spray. So we can see here Dr. Leonard McCoy using that Hypo Spray, and Dr. Beverly Crusher also in this picture is using a Hypo Spray. So the Hypo Spray was a medical device used to inject liquids into the body. The system used a non-invasive transport mechanism of compressed air to transfer the injectant from the device into the subdermal layer below the skin of the body or artery. This was done without the use of a needle, ensuring that the skin was not punctured during use, thus reducing the risk of infection or pain at the site of injection.
out of it, Mr. Sulu?
We're holding orbit, sir. The helm is sluggish.
Control circuit's threatening to overload, Captain.
Understood, engineer.
Spock.
And avoid these areas of turbulence.
I believe we'll have them plotted in a few more orbits, Captain.
Sick bay, to bridge. Switching to manual, Captain. Do we maintain this orbit?
Spock, this is of great scientific importance, Captain. We're actually passing through ripples in time.
Maintain orbit. Engineer, open the channel to Starfleet Command. Precautionary measure, Lieutenant. Broadcast to Starfleet Command my past week's log entry, starting with the unusual readings we had on the instruments and how they led us here. Inform Starfleet Command that apparently something or someone down on this planet, pause, can affect changes in time, causing turbulent waves of space displacement.
Some heart flutter. Better risk a few drops of cortisone.
It's tricky stuff. Are you sure you want to risk?
You were about to make a medical comment, Jim?
Who, me, Doctor?
We're guiding around most of the time ripples now, Captain.
Good. Mr. Spock.
All plotted but one, Captain. Coming up on it now. Seems to be fairly heavy displacement.
Halt! Thank you, physicians.
The hypo, Captain.
It was set for cortisone.
Empty.
Now here is a picture of Dr. Leonard McCoy injecting some sort of medication through the skin of Captain Kirk using the hypospray. Now the hypospray is not anymore a product of fantasy and science fiction. Now in the real world, there is a version of this hypospray known as the jet injector. This device, the jet injector, uses compressed air to inject the medication through the skin, much like the hypospray of Dr. Leonard McCoy. So the developers of this jet injector got the inspiration from Dr. McCoy's medical hypospray. Okay, now another Star Trek spin-off is the Star Trek Sick Bay. So we have here a picture of Dr. Beverly Crusher with her high-tech gadgetry in her sick bay. And we have here a picture of Dr. Leonard McCoy with all those monitors in his sick bay. Now, this is not anymore a product of fantasy and science fiction. We have our own version of that Star Trek medical sick bay. Now, Dr. McCoy would feel right at home working with this new high-tech medical bed developed by a cross-disciplinary team from the university and the university hospitals of Leicester. So, isn't that fascinating indeed?
Greetings, nurse.
Mr. Spock's blood reproduction rate is up over 200%. Zarek's heart rate has risen to 324. Blood pressure 90/40, dropping.
I wish I knew whether that was good or bad. Initiate sterile field.
Mr. Spock.
Where do you think you're going?
I must see the captain.
My patients don't walk out in the middle of an operation.
Alien ship, I just realized if their power utilization curve is not the norm, it should be Oscar. Identify them as important.
So is your father's life.
So here is a picture of that high-tech medical bed with all those gadgets to monitor the vital signs of the patient. So this high-tech medical bed from the University Hospital of Leicester is very similar to the sick bay of Dr. Leonard McCoy from the Star Trek original series and Dr. Beverly Crusher's sick bay from the Star Trek The Next Generation. Now, another Star Trek spin-off is the Star Trek phaser weapon. This phaser weapon is a high-energy weapon much like the lasers of today. Now, laser is the acronym for light amplification stimulated by the emission of radiation. Now, in real life, there is a real phaser weapon. Now, the U.S. military is actively working on a directed energy weapons such as battlefield lasers. The U.S. Navy is scheduled to deploy its first ship-based laser weapon later this summer on the USS Ponce for at-sea testing in the Persian Gulf. Such weapons are intended to be used against enemy small boats and light aircraft. The Navy is also developing similar lasers to be mounted on ground vehicles to keep enemy unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs from tracking and targeting Marines on the ground.
Scotty, commence firing and maintain.
Mr. Kyle, all phasers, commence firing.
Tremendous upsurge in generated power, Captain. Obviously, Vol is trying to reinforce his energy field.
Good, let's see how long you can do it.
Scotty, cease fire!
Now that video clip that you saw was from the Star Trek original series entitled The Apple. Now here is a picture of the directed energy weapon being developed by the US Navy. And the Chinese Liberation Army may be equipping their troops with new handheld laser weapons, but not quite the phasers from Star Trek or the blasters from Star Wars. These weapons are designed to blind sensors and possibly enemy personnel, preventing them from accurately deploying their own lethal weapons. So here is a picture of that handheld laser being developed by the Chinese Liberation Army. Fantastic, isn't it? Now, another Star Trek spin-off is the shuttlecraft. Now, the shuttlecraft was a type of auxiliary space vehicle typically attached to a starship or a starbase. Now, most shuttlecraft were short-range transports possessing only impulse drive or ion propulsion with limited warp capability. Utilization of the shuttlecraft was common for most spacefaring civilizations, and along with the transporter were two of the more common conventional modes of transportation to and from one place to another. The shuttlecraft were generally used for landings when transporters were inoperable. So here is a picture of that famous shuttlecraft Galileo from the original Star Trek series entitled Galileo 7. And the space shuttle of NASA got that inspiration from the shuttlecraft from the Star Trek original series. In fact, one of the space shuttles was named after the USS Enterprise. So here is a picture of the Enterprise, that's the space shuttle. And we have here the cast of the original Star Trek series. And we have here the picture of the space shuttle Enterprise.
Power up. All instruments activated. All readings normal. All go.
Launch shuttlecraft.
Readings normal. Acceleration normal. Phase 1 separation normal.
Position?
3.7.
Sir, make up your mind, please, Mr. Latimer.
So this indicator's gone crazy.
That's to be expected, Mr. Spock. Quasars are extremely disruptive. Just how much, we don't know.
Considerably, Mr. Boma.
Mr. Spock, radiation is increasing.
Stop forward momentum, Mr. Latimer.
I can't, sir. Nothing happened.
Galileo to Enterprise. Galileo to Enterprise. Come in, please.
Ionic interference, Mr. Spock.
Being drawn right into it. Galileo to Enterprise. Galileo to Enterprise. We are out of control, being pulled directly into the heart of Murasaki 312. Being hit by violent radiation on outer hull. Course 3.25.
Anything at all?
Nothing clear, Captain.
Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed that video clip from the original Star Trek episode Galileo 7 featuring the shuttlecraft Galileo. Alright, now another Star Trek spin-off is ion propulsion. In fact, the shuttlecraft Galileo is powered by ion propulsion. Now, this is not a product of science fiction or fantasy. NASA already had developed ion propulsion. Okay, so here is a schematic diagram of an ion engine designed by NASA. And ion thrusters based on a NASA design are now being used to keep over 100 geosynchronous Earth orbit communication satellites in their desired locations. And 3 N-star ion thrusters that utilize Glenn-developed technology are enabling the Dawn spacecraft launched in 2007 to travel deep into our solar system. Dawn is the first spacecraft to orbit 2 objects in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So we have the asteroids Vesta and Ceres.
Here's the bank standing by.
Times 43,000 and closing.
What do you read, Mr. Spock?
Configuration unidentified. Ion propulsion, high velocity, though of a unique technology.
Any contact, Lieutenant?
Failing on all frequencies, sir. All languages have been attempted. No response. Now using standard interstellar symbols.
Keep trying.
Aye, sir.
Magnification 10, Mr. Sigmund.
Aye, sir. 38,000 and closing.
Well, Scotty.
Beats me, but isn't she a beauty?
Interesting design.
I've never seen anything like her. And ion propulsion at that. Ah, they could teach us a thing or two.
Life forms, Mr. Spock?
Now, the ion thruster is not a product of fantasy and science fiction. The ion thruster is now a reality. In fact, the Dawn spacecraft has 3 ion thrusters, and we know in history that the Dawn spacecraft had visited the asteroids Vesta and Ceres. So isn't that fascinating indeed? Okay, now another Star Trek spin-off is warp drive technology. Now, to give you an idea of what warp drive is a faster-than-light engine. This is a spacecraft propulsion system that is well-defined in the Star Trek universe. So, in Star Trek, this warp drive works by annihilating a deuterium with antimatter in the fusion reaction moderated by dilithium crystals. This produces a large amount of energy, which is enough to warp space-time and drive the Starship Enterprise to travel faster than light.
Notify the captain.
What are you doing here?
Watch your panels, everyone.
Watch that polymath. Roger, help with the interfactor. Leave that alone.
This primitive matter-antimatter propulsion system is the main drive.
Aye.
Inefficiency exists in the antimatter input valve. I will effect repair.
How are you doing that?
The energy release controls are also most inefficient. I shall effect repair.
Formation, Scott. And increasing. Blow your dampers. Warp 9. Cut your circuits, all of them.
Now, you might think that this warp drive technology from Star Trek is too complicated. Now, to put it simply, the warp drive method of space travel involves stretching the fabric of space-time in a wave, which would, in theory, cause the space ahead of an object to contract while the space behind it would expand, as you could see in this illustration. This is possible by the reaction between matter, which is the deuterium, and antimatter. The reaction will release a tremendous amount of energy, stretching the fabric of space-time in a wave. An object inside this wave, like the Starship Enterprise, would then be able to ride this region known as a warp bubble of flat space. So isn't that fascinating about warp drive technology? Now, hopefully in the near future, this technology would be developed. Now, a theoretical scientist by the name of Miguel Alcubierre has designed a similar technology known as the Alcubierre warp drive. So hopefully in the near future, Miguel Alcubierre's warp drive engine would be a reality so that we can travel at warp speed like Star Trek. Now, that is really fascinating about warp drive technology. Now, in the near future, if that Alcubierre warp drive would become a reality, then that means that we can travel from one star system to another in a matter of weeks. And that is really fascinating indeed. Now, lastly, another spin-off from Star Trek is robotics. Now, the concept of robots was first introduced in the Star Trek original series. And in the Star Trek The Next Generation, Lieutenant Commander Data was an android. Okay, now robots today are now in service to humanity. Robots are now assembling automobiles, and we have the development of human-like robots like Asimo. And robots are now exploring the planets like this Perseverance rover, which is on its way to the planet Mars.
Drop it.
Now, do you understand?
If these mechanical things have no feelings and perform only as you program them, then why did Brown try to shoot me? Why did he kill two of my men? There are many things I don't understand, Doctor.
I will answer all of your questions. Now. This is how you make an android. Andrea?
Now, aside from these spin-offs, there are other aspects in the Star Trek universe that we need to consider. And one of them is the concept of the deflector shield. Now, the deflector shield or screen, or generally referred to simply as shield or a shield grid or planetary shield, were a type of force field that surrounds a starship, a space station, or planet, and its main function is to protect against enemy attacks or natural hazards. Now, these deflector shields, they work by creating a layer or layers of energetic distortion containing a high concentration of gravitrons around the object to be protected. Now, you might think that the concept of the deflector shield is just a product of fantasy and science fiction. Now, a group of students from the University of Leicester have thought long and hard about what it would take to build a deflector shield in real life, and it turns out to be possible. Now, the paper published in the Student Journal of Special Physics Topics details a means by which plasma could be used to create a barrier around a ship or other object which could deflect certain kinds of energy. Now, how does this plasma energy barrier works? Now, to put it simply, the system is designed to create a shell of ionized air, a plasma field essentially between the shock wave of an oncoming blast and the object being protected. Now, according to the patent, it works by heating a selected region of the first fluid medium rapidly to create a second transient medium that intercepts the shock wave and attenuates its energy density before it reaches a protected asset. The protective arc of air can be superheated using a laser. Now, in theory, such a plasma field should dissipate any shock wave that comes into contact with it. So, isn't that fascinating? Now, such a plasma energy barrier can be made possible in the near future.
The presence of any disease organisms. They do not. In addition, we received a routine report from this system only a week ago. Even the Cymbeline blood burn does not act that swiftly.
Captain, shields just snapped on. Something heading in at multi-warp speeds.
Evasive maneuvers, Mr. Sulu.
Extremely powerful bolt of energy, Captain.
Full power to the shields, Mr. Scout.
Give them all we got, son.
All hands, red alert. Laser bank, stand by. Photon torpedoes, condition red. Condition red.
It's going to hit.
Now, another thing that we need to consider in the science of Star Trek would be the concept of alien beings. Now, nothing in science fiction has contributed to the depth of the extraterrestrial encyclopedia like Star Trek. From Mr. Spock being a Vulcan and Diana Troy being a Betazoid, and even Lieutenant Worf being a Klingon, Star Trek writers have dreamed up to nearly 300 different alien species and counting. Now, the concept of extraterrestrial life is not new to science. In fact, the NASA Kepler spacecraft and other astronomical research programs have discovered more than 3,300 planets. Planets are common in our galaxy, just as the creators of Star Trek believed. There are clear signs that life potentially has numerous home sites in the galaxy. Now here is a picture of the Kepler Space Telescope. This telescope has discovered more than 1,000 planets in our galaxy. And most scientists now agree that life probably exists in other solar systems. The chemical elements for carbon-based life, like the life forms here on Earth, are common in the universe. So maybe life forms like ourselves are numerous in the galaxy. We can imagine all kinds of intelligent creatures with any number of arms, legs, eyes, or antennae, or maybe a lot smarter than we are. It seems doubtful that humanoid shapes would be as common as the alien races on the Star Trek shows.
Captain. This tunnel, my readings indicate it was made within the hour. Moments ago, in fact.
Are you certain?
Positive.
This tunnel goes back as far as the eye can see. Our best machinery couldn't cut a tunnel like this. Not even with phasers.
Indeed, Captain. I'm quite at a loss.
Down.
Disappeared. Astonishing that anything of that bulk could move so rapidly.
No. No, I won't kill you. Maybe you thought you were protecting yourself when you attacked the outpost. No, I won't kill him. Do you hear? You'll have to get your entertainment someplace else. You're a Metrone?
Does my appearance surprise you, Captain?
You seem more like a boy.
I am approximately 1,500 of your Earth years old. You surprise me, Captain.
How?
By sparing your helpless enemy, who surely would have destroyed you. You demonstrated the advanced trait of mercy. Something we hardly expected. We feel that there may be hope for your kind. Therefore, you will not be destroyed. It would not be civilized.
Now, isn't that fascinating about the concept of alien beings? Now, aside from our planet, there are members in our solar system where life may exist, such as Mars. Also, we have Europa, one of the Galilean moons of Jupiter. Titan, also with its atmosphere, the largest moon of Saturn. and also one of the moons of Saturn called Enceladus. Now, before we end with this talk on the science of Star Trek, I want you now to pay attention to this segment from the original Star Trek series entitled Return to Tomorrow. Now, I want you to listen to the dialogue of Captain Kirk with his officers of the USS Enterprise, and this dialogue really inspired me to love the sciences. So let's watch this.
Going to what? Are they all right in the head, Doctor?
No comment.
A simple transference. Their minds and ours.
Quite simple. Happens every day.
Scotty, I need your approval, too. Since you'll be working with them, furnishing them with all they need to make the android robots. You won't be working with them, you'll be working with us, our bodies. They'll be inside us, and we'll be...
It all seems rather indecent to me.
I'm not so certain of that, Doctor. It is scientifically fascinating.
Once inside their mechanical bodies, Engineer, they can leave this planet, travel back with us. With their knowledge, mankind could leap ahead 10,000 years.
Bones, they'll show us medical advances, miracles you never dreamed possible. Scotty, engineering advances, vessels this size, with engines the size of walnuts.
Oh, you're joking.
No, he's not.
They're giants and we're insects beside them. They could destroy us without meaning to. And all he wants is the body of our captain. And our second in command, too. Coincidence?
They selected us as the most compatible bodies.
What's your attitude on that, Doctor?
Well, if we all agree, I'm willing to host the Lace's mind. I'm a scientist. The opportunity is an extraordinary one for experimentation, observation.
A starship engine the size of a walnut? That's impossible. But I don't suppose there'd be any harm in looking over diagrams on it.
Bones, you could stop all this by saying no. That's why I called you all here together. We'll all be deeply involved. It must be unanimous.
Well, then I still want one question answered to my satisfaction. Why? Not a list of possible miracles, but a simple, basic, understandable why that overrides all danger. And let's not kid ourselves that there is no potential danger in this.
They used to say if man could fly, he'd have wings. But he did fly. He discovered he had to. Do you wish that the first Apollo mission hadn't reached the moon, or that we hadn't gone on to Mars and then to the nearest star? That's like saying you wish that you still operated with scalpels and sewed your patients up with catgut, like your great-great-great-great-grandfather used to. I'm in command. I could order this. But I'm not. Because Dr. McCoy is right in pointing out the enormous danger potential in any contact with life and intelligence as fantastically advanced as this. But I must point out that the possibilities, the potential for knowledge and advancement is equally great. Risk is our business. That's what the starship is all about. That's why we're aboard her. You may dissent without prejudice. Do I hear a negative vote? Aboard 3 receptacles.
The extreme power of the alien mind will drive the heart action dangerously high, and the body functions will race many times their normal metabolism. So we're going to have to monitor this very carefully.
Yes, sir.
So really, that dialogue really was inspiring, and every time I watch that episode, it always gives me goosebumps. Okay, so that's the dialogue from that original Star Trek series, Return to Tomorrow. And as Captain Kirk mentioned, the greatest danger facing us is ourselves, an irrational fear of the unknown. But there is no such thing as the unknown, only things temporarily hidden and temporarily not understood. And that's the reason why NASA has launched the Perseverance rover, which is now on its way to the planet Mars, seeking the unknown. Well, I guess that's it for this talk on the science of Star Trek. Now, you might think that watching science fiction movies or science fiction TV shows is a totally waste of time. But no. So as you watch science fiction movies or science fiction TV shows, use your imagination. Be inspired by them. Imagine, and then you create. Okay. So I would like to thank the officers and crew of the Bedan Society of Young Astronomers, and as usual, the administration of San Beda College Senior High School for supporting BSYA. Please check out our Facebook page, the Bedan Society of Young Astronomers, and always check our Twitter account. Okay, this is Professor Jun Cajigal saying, live long and prosper, and I will see you soon. Okay, so good night, everybody.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone.